Good evening. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Thursday, Yom Hamishi. Let's light up the darkness. I'm verklempt. Who's in the house? Steven in New Hampshire, Sharon in New Jersey, Guy in Ohio, Melissa in New York, Joe in the Inland Empire, Shandor in the Bronx, Bella in Florida, Gail in Kansas City, Nancy, North Carolina, Sharon in New Jersey, Yehudit in South Carolina, and Bill in Missouri, and Lorraine in Texas. Frank in San Pedro, Ohio in Florida, Franco in Trieste, Ella in Southern California, Alan in New York City, Aoife in Florida. Welcome, everybody. Okay. Single daf today because we only made a little bit of progress into page 20b yesterday. We'll do 21 today, God willing, and set ourselves up to do another double tomorrow, Friday, at the regular Friday time, noon Pacific. Okay, working our way through chapter 3, continuing our discussion of Mishnah number 1, the language of oaths, the types of oaths as opposed to vows. A vow, I declare that I will do something and that I will not do something. That often it's I declare that something is prohibited to me, I will never benefit from it. An oath is more like I swear before the Lord that I will eat, that I won't eat, that I did eat, that I did not eat. Okay. Picking this up about, 20b was quite a short page, so a third of the way down. When Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, meaning that Rav Dimi went from the Jewish community in the land of Israel to the Jewish community in Babylonia, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, he reported that Rabbi Yochanan says, if one takes an oath saying, I will eat, or I will not eat, so it's relating to the future, and he does not fulfill it, right? So he breaks his oath. He violates his oath. What do we call that technically? A false oath, right? And this is going to be akin to somebody who swears an oath that he ate a thing yesterday when he did not eat it, even though the behavior is quite different, right? When somebody swears as to what happened yesterday and he lies, whether intentionally or not, has a different characteristic for us than somebody who says, I swear an oath that I will eat something, and then he doesn't eat it. But it's the same transgression. It is swearing a false oath, someone who swears falsely. And its prohibition in the Torah is from here. Leviticus 19:12, and you shall not take an oath by my name falsely, so that you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Let me put this computer on. Do not disturb me when I am teaching. And likewise, yeah, very good. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so that would be a false oath, and we derive that from Leviticus 19:12. Now, if one takes an oath saying, I ate, or I did not eat, now he's speaking about the past, relating to past actions, and it is a lie. It is an oath taken in vain. This is Rav Dimi. And its prohibition is its prohibition in the Torah is from here. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not absolve of guilt he that takes his name in vain. That's Exodus 20, verse 7. Now, not everyone agrees with Rav Dimi on this. Rav Dimi continued with regard to vows, where one takes, where one states that an item is forbidden, like an offering, right? So in other words, if you set aside your sheep to be an offering that you're going to bring to the Holy Temple when it's standing in Jerusalem and offer it up there on the altar, right? You have consecrated that animal. Now that it's consecrated, It belongs to the Holy Temple. It belongs to God. It no longer belongs to you. You're responsible to get it there to Jerusalem to make the offering, but you can no longer benefit from that animal because it is an offering. Therefore, if you say that an animal is like an offering, what you've actually said is that I am prohibited to benefit from it, right? I can't eat it. I can't shear it for its wool. I can't work it, to pull my plow, etc. So when you say that something is like an offering, what you've really done is taken a vow or an oath to render it prohibited to you, right? So Rav Dimi said, with regard to vows, now we're talking about vows, this is a declaration, where one states that an item is forbidden like an offering, this is known as konamos. If he subsequently derives benefit from that item, he violates the prohibition when a man vows a vow to the Lord or takes an oath to bind his soul with a bond. He shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. Now, the Gemara raises an objection to this. The prohibitions against taking an oath in vain and taking a false oath are one. The Gemara suggests, what? Is the Baraisa not teaching that if an oath taken in vain refers to the past, a false oath also refers to the past? So apparently the statements I ate and I did not eat are both false oaths, not oaths taken in vain. And this is contrary to Rabbi Yochanan's statement that a false oath is one that... Wait a minute. Yeah. So apparently the statements I ate and I did not eat are both false oaths, contrary to Rabbi Yochanan's statement that a false oath is one that relates to the future. So the Gemara answers, are the cases comparable? This case of a false oath is as it is, and that case of an oath taken in vain is as it is. What then is the meaning of the assertion of the Baraisa that they are one? It is that both were spoken in a single utterance at the giving of the Torah. This is a fascinating concept here. At the giving of the Torah. Like that which is taught in a Baraisa. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, and observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Shamor v'zachor, right? So zachor is remember, shamor is honor or keep the Sabbath day. Why do we have two different words? Because the Ten Commandments are stated twice. Once in the book of Exodus, in the narrative, right, at the time that they are given, right, when all the greatest moment in human history, 2 to 3 million of our ancestors gathered around Mount Sinai. God makes God's self seen and heard. 2 commandments are spoken. The people can't take it anymore. They say to Moses, please take dictation for us. And Moses writes down the rest of it. So in the 10 commandments themselves, and the 4th commandment is Shabbos, right? So the way it's written in the book of Exodus, I'm actually forgetting which is which, but in Exodus it says remember, zachor, to remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And then when the 10 commandments are restated in Deuteronomy, it says keep the Sabbath day or guard the Sabbath day, shamor, right? So what does it mean? Did Moses get it wrong? Did he remember it wrong at the time of the writing of the book of Deuteronomy? Now, there are people who will say, scribal error, tradition. We don't hold by that. Okay? We don't hold by that. The Torah is exactly the way that the Torah is supposed to be. And any minute, nuanced change in even a single letter has meaning that we're supposed to learn from. So the fact that there are 2 words given with respect to Shabbos, first of all, that there are 2 commandments that are given there, right? So guard the Sabbath day to keep it holy, or keep the Sabbath day holy. That means don't do work on Shabbos. Remember the Sabbath day, zachor. That means that you shall sanctify it by making kiddush as we enter the Sabbath, right? So remember it is a positive commandment. Sanctify the day as we enter into it. And keep it or guard it is a negative commandment, a negative prohibition. Don't do work on Shabbos. Now, did God give the 10 commandments twice? Did he speak twice? No. And so what we're learning here is that when God uttered the 10 commandments, God doesn't speak like humans speak. If God wants 2 words to come across at the same time, God can do that. Right? So let's get back in here. Right? And so this idea, when we say that they are one, the false oath and the vain oath, this is similar to that both were spoken in a single utterance at the giving of the Torah. Like that which is taught in the Baraisa, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy in Exodus 28, and observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy in Deuteronomy 5:12. These were spoken in one utterance in a manner that the human mouth cannot say and that the human ear cannot hear. And that's why Moses rendered it as remember in the book of Exodus and observe in the book of Deuteronomy. Now, the Gemara asks, granted, there, remember, and observe were spoken in a single utterance in order to teach the law that Rav Ada bar Ahava says, as Rav Ada bar Ahava says, women are obligated to recite Kiddush, sanctifying the 7th day, Shabbos, by Torah law, even though it is a positive time-bound commandment, and normally women are not obligated in time-bound positive commandments. That's why men are obligated to put on tefillin every day, and women are not obligated. And this is since the verse states, remember and observe, indicating that anyone who is obligated to observe, right, in other words, not to work on Shabbos, that's the negative prohibition, is also obligated to remember by reciting Kiddush, right? And that's why women are obligated to recite or to hear Kiddush. You don't have to be the one who says Kiddush, but everyone is obligated, every Jew is obligated to hear Kiddush on Shabbos. And these women, since they are obligated to observe, they are also obligated to remember. But here, with regard to the prohibitions against taking a false oath and taking an oath in vain, for what law is it necessary for them to have been spoken in a single utterance? And the Gemara explains, rather, the 2 prohibitions were spoken together to teach that just as one is flogged for taking an oath in vain, one is also flogged for taking a false oath. We've said it before, we'll get back to it soon. What is the real difference between a false oath and an oath in vain? But basically, when you make a false oath, you're lying, right? Either because you lie, whether intentionally or unintentionally, about something that happened, or you're made into a liar because you swear that you will do something and then you don't. That's a false oath. A vain oath is something that is false. In that sense, it's a lie also, but it's something that everyone knows it's false. It's obvious, right? If somebody were to say, if Joe says that he swears that the moon is made out of green cheese, that's an oath in vain because it's nonsense. Everyone knows the moon is not made out of green cheese. And so he's just taking the Lord's name in vain. He's speaking an oath in vain by making such an utterance. That's an oath in vain. Right. So the Gemara asks, isn't it the opposite? It is clear that one receives lashes for taking a false oath about the future, which one violates with an action. But an oath taken in vain about the past is merely a verbal pronouncement. Right? And so there's the general rule that even when you violate a Torah law, when you violate a Torah law intentionally, you can become subject to, not every law, but certain laws, then you become subject to lashes, right? Like if you're told not to work, we're commanded not to work on Shabbos, and then you do work on Shabbos, you could become subject to lashes. There's an issue there because it could also be a death penalty offense, but you're commanded not to eat forbidden fat and you eat it, and you do that intentionally and you've been warned, you could be subject to lashes because you took an action. But if you're supposed to, let's say, eat matzah on Passover and you don't, right? That's a sin of omission. You didn't do a positive mitzvah, so that normally won't trigger lashes. And something that you do just by speaking as opposed to an actual action normally doesn't trigger lashes, except in a few exceptions, as we've seen. One is violating an oath, That's you do it with speech, but you can become subject to lashes for it. Another is cursing somebody using a name of the Lord. Again, that's a very serious offense, and lashes do apply, even though it's only performed by speech and not by actual deeds. Right? Isn't it the opposite? It's clear that one receives lashes for taking a false oath about the future, which one violates with an action. If he says he won't eat and then he does eat, right? He swears an oath that he won't eat and then he does, so he took an action when he ate, and we see why it would trigger lashes. But if he said that he takes an oath that he will eat something the next day and then he doesn't, so he didn't take an action, he failed to act, right? It was an inaction. But according to this teaching, lashes would apply also. So rather say like this: just as one is flogged for taking a false oath, i.e. violating one's oath about the future, so is one flogged for taking an oath in vain. The Gemara asks, why must the Baraisa state that one is flogged for either type of oath? Isn't it obvious? This is a prohibition that is a prohibition. And for both, one is liable to receive lashes, right? When you violate a negative prohibition is when you can be subject to lashes as opposed to a positive commandment. Now the Gemara answers, lest you say, as Rav Papa said to Abaye, that the verse, quote, for the Lord will not absolve of guilt he that takes his name in vain, Exodus 20 verse 7. This might indicate that God will not absolve him at all. Even if he is punished, he cannot atone for his sin. And it teaches us, as Abaye answers him below. We're going to come to this. Now we're on page 21a. Now the Gemara offers an alternative resolution of the difficulty posed by the Baraisa. And if you wish, say that the assertion of the Baraisa that the prohibitions against taking an oath in vain and taking a false oath are one, and that this means just as one brings an offering for taking a false oath, so one brings an offering for taking an oath in vain. And this is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who deems one liable to bring an offering for taking an oath in vain that refers to the past, just as for taking a false oath that refers to the future. Right? And that's why it's 2 that became 4, as we established at the very beginning of the tractate, and again here in the beginning of chapter 3. Now the Gemara raised an objection to Rabbi Yochanan's distinction between a false oath and an oath taken in vain from a Baraisa. Which oath is an oath taken in vain? It is when one takes an oath to deny that which is commonly known to people to be true. One who swears that the moon is green cheese, this would be an oath in vain. Or one who says, that he denies that there is a moon in the sky. He swears that there is no moon in the sky. Everyone knows there's a moon in the sky. Maybe you don't see it because it's a new moon, or it's cloudy, or it's daytime, or it's not visible right now. But, one who says that he denies that there is a moon circling the earth, everyone knows that that's true. So if he swore that he denies as a matter of an oath that there is a moon circling the earth, this would be an oath in vain because he's swearing as to something that everyone knows. And a false oath, as opposed to an oath in vain, a false oath is when one takes an oath that contradicts the past that's known to him. The Gemara answers, say, meaning emend the Baraisa, to say that a false oath is when one takes an oath and subsequently contradicts it by acting otherwise. Right? That they're arguing about, again, is do false oaths refer to both I swear that I will do something and then he doesn't do it, and I swear that I did do something yesterday when in fact he had not done it. Right? So the difference between past and future. Now, when Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he reported that Rabbi Yirmiyah says that Rabbi Bachu says that Rabbi Yochanan says. If one takes an oath saying, I ate, or I did not eat, talking about the past, and it's not true, then he has sworn a false oath. And how do we know that this is prohibited? Its prohibition is in the Torah, at Leviticus 19:12, where it says, and you shall not take an oath by my name, this is God speaking, you shall not take an oath by my name falsely, so that you profane the name of your God, I am the Lord. If one takes an oath saying, I will eat, now he's talking about the future, or I will not eat, and he breaks that oath, then he violates the prohibition. When a man vows a vow to the Lord or takes an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word, at Numbers 30, verse 3. And which oath is an oath taken in vain? It is when one takes an oath to deny that which is known by people to be true. So according to this analysis, false oath is about the past. Oath in vain is about things that are commonly known. And if you're talking about the future, it has its own prohibition that you broke your vow or you broke your oath, not a false oath. Rav Papa said this statement of Rabbi Abahu, i.e. conveying the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, was not stated explicitly by Rabbi Abahu. Rather, was stated by inference. It was inferred from that which Rav Edi Bar Avin says, that Rav Amram says, that Rav Yitzchak says, that Rabbi Yochanan says, that Rabbi Yehuda says, in the name of Rabbi Yosei HaGalili. With regard to any prohibition in the Torah, if it is a prohibition that involves an action, one is flogged for violating it. But with regard to a prohibition that does not involve an action, one is not flogged for violating it, except in the cases of one who takes an oath and one who substitutes a different animal for one that was consecrated to be sacrificed, and one who curses another person using one of the divine names. Now the Gemara asks, from where do we derive that one who takes an oath that is not true is flogged? So are we saying it's not true because it was in the past and he's lying about it the moment that he speaks it? Or because it's going to be in the future and it ends up being false because he didn't fulfill his word? Let's keep reading. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, the verse states, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not absolve guilt in he that takes his name in vain. It is the heavenly court that does not absolve him, but the earthly court flogs him, and in doing so, absolves him of guilt. However, there's a note here. Although one who takes an oath falsely or in vain is flogged, and one who takes an untrue oath of testimony or an untrue oath of deposit brings an offering, right? One who swears falsely in court, one cannot fully atone for the sin of taking a false oath. As it says, the Lord will not absolve. Therefore, one must be very cautious with regard to this sin, even more than with regard to other sins, says Rambam. Right? One who takes a false oath, there may be an offering that you can bring to atone for your guilt. There may be lashes that you could receive, which would be painful, but would be good for you in the long run because it atones for your sin, right? It absolves you of the guilt by going through that process of either bringing an offering if it was done unintentionally, or of receiving lashes if it was done intentionally and you were warned, etc. But, somewhat unique, I don't know how many other laws have this in the Torah, but the law of the false oath, one who swears falsely. Now, swearing means you're invoking the name of God when you are claiming that you did something or you didn't do something, that you will do something or you didn't do something, or that something is true or that it is not true. You're invoking the name of God when you make that statement. And then it turns out that it was false. So while you may be able to bring an offering or receive lashes for it, you will not be entirely absolved of guilt. An earthly court can absolve you, but the Lord will not, right? So that sin between you and God, God forbid, will always stand. So let us all remember to be meticulous. And think about, how often people in the culture, just, not even religious people, but just, use that term. I'm just for teaching example now. A person says, I swear to God. And then blah, 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 blah. Very loose use of that phrase, where it could easily turn out that it was not true. Let's not do that. The Gemara asks, we found a source for receiving lashes for an oath taken in vain, despite the fact that no physical action was performed. From where do we derive that this is also the law with regard to a false oath? Rabbi Yochanan himself said, the verse states in vain, twice. If the second mention is not necessary for the matter of an oath taken in vain, since it was already stated, apply it to the matter of the false oath. And Rabbi Abahu discusses this. With regard to this false oath referred to by Rabbi Yochanan, what are the circumstances under which one who takes it is flogged? If we say it is when he says, on my oath I will not eat, and then he eats. That is a prohibition that involves an action. And if one would rather say that he says, on my oath I will eat, and then he does not eat, right? He swears that he will perform an action, and then he doesn't perform it. So the transgression is that he doesn't perform something he took an oath to do. It's inaction, right? It's inaction that ends up rendering his oath a false oath. And if one would rather say that he says, on my oath I will eat, and then he does not eat, is one who breaks his oath like that flogged? But wasn't it stated that with regard to one who says, on my oath I will eat this loaf today, and the day passed, and he did not eat it, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both say that he is not flogged. Right? We saw this in Tractate Makos. Now, Rabbi Yochanan says he is not flogged because it is a prohibition that does not involve an action. And concerning any prohibition that does not involve an action, one is not flogged for violating it. Reish Lakish gives a different reason and says that the person is not flogged because his violation of the prohibition necessarily involves an uncertain warning. And an uncertain warning is not considered a forewarning at all. Only if one is forewarned immediately prior to violating a prohibition does he receive lashes, right? If somebody says to somebody else, the guy's about to, eat forbidden fat. He says, hey, that's prohibited to you. If you eat that, you'll be subject to lashes. And then he eats it. So then he could receive lashes. So that's a certain forewarning. But if someone said, I'm gonna eat, this cupcake tomorrow. He swears an oath that he's gonna eat this cupcake tomorrow. And then tomorrow's here. And since somebody says to him, hey, if you don't eat that cupcake now that you swore you're gonna eat it, you're going to be subject to lashes. And the guy doesn't eat it right away. But he could eat it later. So there's no guarantee, at the time of the warning that he's going to fail to fulfill his oath because, he doesn't have to fulfill his oath immediately after the warning is given, but he could still fulfill it later. That's why it's an uncertain forewarning. In response to his own question, Rabbi Abahu says, the case where one takes a false oath is flogged will be where he takes an oath saying, in the past, I ate or I did not eat. And the Gemara asks, what is different about oaths relating to the past, for which one is liable to receive lashes even though he did not perform an action, and oaths relating to the future that one violates by omission and for which one is therefore exempt from lashes, according to Rabbi Yochanan, because it is a prohibition that does not involve an action. And Rava said the Torah explicitly extended the liability to receive lashes to one who takes a false oath that is similar to an oath taken in vain. Just as an oath taken in vain refers to the past, so too one is liable for a false oath that refers to the past. This discussion, right, when he says, I swear that the moon is made out of cheese, or is not made out, or is not circling the earth, right? That's something that's already happened, right? It's already in place. The Torah explicitly extended liability to receive lashes to one who takes a false oath that is similar to an oath taken in vain. Just as an oath taken in vain refers to the past, so too one is liable for a false oath that refers to the past. This discussion of Rabbi Bahu's is the source of this inference as to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan mentioned by Rav Papa. We had to review all that to understand where they get that Rabbi Yochanan holds as he does. Rabbi Yirmiyah raised an objection to the opinion of Rabbi Abahu, stating what Rabbi Yochanan holds or doesn't hold, from a Mishnah that we'll encounter on page 27b. If one says, on my oath, I will not eat this loaf, and then he says, on my oath, I will not eat it. And then a third time, on my oath, I will not eat it. And he subsequently ate it. He is liable only once. Did he violate one oath or 3 oaths, right? 3 times he said, I will not eat that cupcake. And he swore it as an oath, right? On my oath, I will not eat that cupcake. On my oath, I will not eat it. On my oath, I will not eat it. And then he does eat it. So 3 utterances of an oath. Why is he liable only for lashes if he did it intentionally, 1 set of lashes, or to bring 1 sin offering if he did this unwittingly? Why not 3 sin offerings since he violated 3 statements? Answer, because once something is the subject of an oath, you can't utter another oath on it. The second oath is meaningless speech, right? If he swore that he won't eat that cupcake, that oath is in place. And if he utters the same words again, another oath relating to that same cupcake that he won't eat it, that's meaningless speech because that cupcake is already subject to his first oath. And this is known as an oath of utterance. This is an oath of an utterance. This is an oath on an utterance for which one who violates the prohibition intentionally is liable to receive lashes, and one who violates unwittingly is liable to bring a sliding scale offering just the one time. Rabbi Yirmiyah asks, when the Mishnah says this is an oath on an utterance, it is to exclude what? Is it not to exclude the case of one who takes an oath relating to the past, saying I ate or I did not eat, thereby indicating that he is not flogged? And the Gemara responds, no. It serves to exclude one who takes an oath saying I ate or I did not eat from liability to bring an offering. The Gemara explains, this is an oath on an utterance for which one who violates it unwittingly is liable to bring a sliding scale offering. But if one takes an oath saying I ate or I did not eat, then no, one does not bring an offering. And this is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael, who says one is liable to bring an offering for breaking oaths relating to the future, but one is flogged even for false oaths relating to the past. One is liable to bring, Rabbi Yishmael says one is liable to bring an offering, only for breaking oaths relating to the future, but one is flogged even for false oaths relating to the past. Now we're on page 21b. Let's break this down. The Gemara asks, say that the latter clause of the Mishnah on page 29a, which oath is an oath taken in vain? It is when one takes an oath to deny that which is known to people to be true. Like one who says with regard to a stone column, and everyone knows it's made out of stone, and he says it's made out of gold. This is an oath taken in vain, for which one is liable to receive lashes if he takes the oath intentionally, and for which one is exempt if he states it unwittingly. And when the Mishnah says this is an oath taken in vain, it is to exclude what? What? Isn't that phrase added to the Mishnah to exclude one who takes an oath saying I ate or I did not eat, teaching that he is not flogged? And the Gemara responds, no, the Mishnah adds, this is an oath to teach that for violating the prohibition against taking an oath in vain, unwittingly, one is exempt from bringing an offering, but one who takes an oath saying I ate or I did not eat in the past is liable to bring an offering if he does it unwittingly. And this is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who deems one liable to bring an offering for oaths referring to the past, just like one is liable for oaths referring to the future. The Gemara asks, so again, they keep challenging, are we going to say that one who speaks falsely when he takes an oath about something that has already happened is going to have the same consequences, bring an offering if done unwittingly, lashes if done intentionally and with warning, is going to have the same consequences as one who swears an oath that he will do something in the future and then ultimately doesn't do it, or one who swears an oath that he will not do something in the future and ultimately does do it. Are we going to say that past and future have the same consequences or not? And they keep arguing about that because they seem to fall into different categories and have, and be covered by different verses in the Torah. So why should they have the same consequences? The Gemara asks, but didn't you say that the first clause of that Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael? How can the first clause follow Rabbi Yishmael's opinion and the latter clause follow Rabbi Akiva's conflicting opinion? And the Gemara answers, the entire Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. And the first clause does not serve to exclude one who took an oath saying, I ate or did not eat in the past, from liability to bring an offering. Rather, it serves to exclude one who took an oath saying, I will eat, and who subsequently did not eat, from the liability to receive lashes, because it was done by inaction, but he is still liable to bring an offering. There is a consequence. We're going to say lashes don't apply, but if you did it unwittingly, bringing an offering does apply. The Gemara asks, and what is different about this way of understanding the Mishnah? That it is to be preferred. And the Gemara answers, it stands to reason that when the Mishnah is addressing an oath referring to the future, it excludes an oath referring to the future in accordance with the reading that the entire Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Does it make sense that when addressing an oath referring to the future, it excludes an oath referring to the past, as the reading of the first clause in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael would have it? Therefore, the added sentence, this is an oath of utterance, this is an oath on an utterance, which normally we understood to mean taking an oath where an oath already is in place. This is an oath on an utterance in the first clause, serves to exclude one who took an oath saying, I will eat, and who subsequently did not eat, from the liability to receive lashes. And the whole Mishnah can be understood as being in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, that one is liable to bring an offering even for oaths relating to the past. The Mishnah, back to Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 3, teaches that if one says, on my oath, I will not eat, and he then ate any amount, even less than an olive bulk, he is liable according to Rabbi Akiva. Now we're on a lot simpler ground. Right? Now the issue is somebody takes an oath, swears an oath that he won't eat, period. Right? Let's say that he won't eat from midnight on Tuesday until midnight on Wednesday. 24-hour period. He says he will not eat, and he swears. Then, if during that period he eats a tiny morsel, less than an olive bulk, did he violate his oath? Normally, when we say that that an act of eating will trigger liability for violating a law, normally there's a minimum volume for you to be, guilty of transgressing that law. Usually it's an olive bulk. But Rabbi Akiva here is going to say, if you swore an oath not to eat anything in that 24-hour period, then no matter what you ate, even the smallest amount, if you eat food, tiny, tiny bit, you violated your oath. That's what they're going to argue on. Right? Even less than an olive bulk, he is liable according to Rabbi Akiva. A dilemma was raised before the sages. Does Rabbi Akiva, in the entire Torah, meaning in general, hold that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who deems one liable for eating any amount of forbidden food? Right? You're not allowed to eat forbidden fats. If you eat a tiny, tiny morsel of forbidden fat, you have to bring an offering if you did unwittingly, or you're subject to lashes if you did intentionally and were warned? But that seems to be what Rabbi Shimon holds. But the majority say, no, you only become guilty if you ate enough that we can call it eating, and the minimum volume for that is like the volume of an olive. The minority view of Rabbi Shimon is any amount of forbidden fat can trigger this liability. Are we going to say that Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi Shimon? Doesn't Rabbi Akiva hold like the majority with respect to minimum volume? As it is taught in Baraisa, Rabbi Shimon says one who eats any amount of forbidden food is liable to receive lashes. And the sages, the majority who overrule Rabbi Shimon, stated the measure of an olive bulk, only in the matter of determining liability to bring an offering. And if, in fact, Rabbi Akiva agrees with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, then by right, the Mishnah should have taught that Rabbi Akiva and the rabbis disagree in general, not that the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Shimon. And the reason that it states only here that they disagree is to convey to you the far-reaching nature of the opinion of the rabbis. The rabbis hold that even though it is possible to say that since one who eats less than an olive bulk after taking an oath in which he specifically forbids himself any amount is liable, one who eats less than an olive bulk without so specifying in his oath will also be liable, as that is included in his oath not to eat. That reasoning is not accepted. The Mishnah therefore states the dispute in the context of an oath that he will not eat in order to teach us that, according to the rabbis, as long as he did not specify that his oath includes any amount, he is exempt from receiving lashes, right? Unless he said, I swear an oath not to eat anything, any amount within that 24-hour period. If he simply said, I will not eat for that 24-hour period, then he's not going to trigger a violation of that oath unless he eats an olive bulk or more. That is how the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Akiva. Now the Gemara presents the other side of the dilemma. Or perhaps, in general, Rabbi Akiva holds like the rabbis, that one must consume at least an olive bulk in order to be liable for a prohibition that involves eating. And here, with regard to an oath that one will not eat, this is the reason that he disagrees in this case, since one who specifically forbids himself any amount is liable, one who eats less than an olive bulk without so specifying in his oath will also be liable. So come in here that which the rabbis said to Rabbi Akiva. Where do we find that one who eats any amount is liable, leading you to say that this person is liable? And the Gemara explains why this is relevant. If it is so that according to Rabbi Akiva, one is always liable for eating any amount, let him say to them in the entire Torah, I hold in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who says any amount of prohibited food can trigger lashes. And the Gemara answers the fact that Rabbi Akiva did not answer the rabbis in that way does not necessarily indicate that he does not agree with Rabbi Shimon in general. Perhaps he is speaking to the rabbis in accordance with their own statement. And this is how he is responding to their question. As far as my opinion is concerned, in the entire Torah, I hold that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, that one is liable for all prohibitions involving eating when one eats any amount. According to you, who say that the minimum measure is an olive bulk, admit to me at least that since one who specifically forbids himself any amount, he is liable. One who eats less than an olive bulk without specifying in his oath will also be liable. And the rabbi said to him, no, we will not admit that. So the Gemara presents another attempt to resolve the dilemma. Come in here in Mishna from Tractate Nazir 34b. Rabbi Akiva says, a Nazir, right, one who takes a vow that he will abstain from products of the grapevine, including wine, brandy, etc., even table grapes, will not cut his hair, and will not come into contact with the dead during the period of his Nazirus. If he doesn't specify the time, it's going to be 30 days. If he specifies the time, then he has to fulfill that vow for that entire period. And then when it ends, he shaves his head, brings certain offerings, and then he can go on his way. If he violates his vow of Nazirus by doing any of those three things, then he has to start the clock over again and complete it. Okay? Rabbi Akiva says, a Nazir who soaked his bread in wine and ate it. What does the bread have to do with the wine? And the two together contain enough to combine to an olive bulk. Okay, so he took like an eighth of a thimble full of wine. That is not an olive bulk of wine. Tiny, tiny amount. But almost like, the problem in, legal problems, right? When people were putting LSD on a sugar cube, right? So the amount of LSD was literally just one drop of liquid. And if it had been put on a piece of paper, that was known as blotter acid in the 60s, right? It would weigh some microscopic amount. If you put that same drop of acid on a sugar cube, it weighs much, much more because of the weight of the sugar. So if they weigh the carrier, then they could say, oh, this guy's going to prison for 20 years because if that sugar cube was pure LSD, it would be like 1,000 hits, right? So does the carrier, the weight of the carrier, come into the minimum measure? Same idea here. A Nazir can't have any wine. He's having less wine than the minimum measure, but it's added to some bread, which now brings it up to the minimum measure. So did he violate his Nazirus? A Nazir who soaked his bread in wine and ate it, and the two together contain enough to combine to an olive bulk, is liable, even though there is less than the minimal measure of wine. And if it should enter your mind that he holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon in general, then why do I need the wine and bread to combine to the measure of an olive bulk? Consumption of any amount of wine would be sufficient for him to be liable. So it seems like Rabbi Akiva does not hold by Rabbi Shimon that any amount of prohibited food triggers liability. And additionally, we learned in the Mishna on page 22b, if one says, on my oath, I will not eat, and then he ate meat of unslaughtered carcasses, nevela, that's prohibited for a Jew to eat. Kosher animal, but not slaughtered in a kosher manner, renders this food not kosher. A Jew is prohibited to eat it. Here, what's the issue? He's saying, on my oath or on my vow, I will not eat this food that is prohibited to me by the Torah. We already said, if you already took an oath not to eat that apple, and then you took another oath not to eat that apple, the second oath is meaningless. When you take an oath to do or not do something that you're already commanded to do or not do by the Torah, that oath is meaningless speech. You didn't do anything. Right? On my oath, I will not eat. And then he ate nevela, or animals or treifa, an animal with a wound that will cause it to die within a year, or repugnant creatures, asherets, or creeping animals. He is liable. And Rabbi Shimon deems him exempt. Right, so what's interesting here is it's not an oath on an utterance. It's not an oath not to eat nevela, which already he's obligated. He just said, I won't eat. And then he ate something that was prohibited to him. So he ate food. It was prohibited food. Are we going to say that eating the prohibited food means that he violated his oath not to eat? Or are we going to say since it was prohibited food, it doesn't come under the definition of eating? Rabbi Shimon deems him exempt. The rabbis say he's liable. He ate food. It doesn't matter. It was prohibited food. He violated his oath. Rabbi Shimon deems him exempt. And we discussed it. Why is he liable for breaking his oath when he eats non-kosher food? He is already under oath from Mount Sinai not to eat forbidden food, and an oath cannot take effect to render a matter forbidden that is already forbidden. Rav and Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan all say this is a case where he incorporates into the oath that he will not eat some permitted items along with the statement concerning forbidden items. Since the oath takes effect with regard to the permitted items, it extends to the forbidden ones. He said he won't eat, right? So that covers all food. And then when he ends up eating non-kosher food, it still violates his oath because it's included in the category of all food. And Reish Lakish says, you find that one is liable for eating forbidden food as a result of an oath only if it is both an oath where he specifies that it includes a half measure, in this case, less than an olive bulk, and in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, that one is not liable for eating a half measure unless it is specified in the oath. Since eating a half measure, right, less than the olive bulk, is not prohibited by the Torah, doesn't trigger what we call eating, because it's less than the minimum measure, the oath does take effect. So alternatively, you find that one is liable if he took the oath without specifying that the oath prohibits less than the usual measure, and in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who says that a person renders himself prohibited for eating any amount by taking an oath not to eat. And if it enters your mind that Rabbi Akiva holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon in general, that any amount triggers liability, this would be difficult, as one who consumes any amount is already under oath from Mount Sinai. Why should the oath take effect according to Reish Lakish? Rather, one must one not conclude from it that in general, Rabbi Akiva holds like the rabbis, there is a minimum measure, and if you eat less than that, you're not liable for eating a prohibited food. But in the case of one who took an oath not to eat at all, then if he eats any amount, it does trigger liability because the oath is a special case. That's what we keep coming back to. Conclude from it that this is so. Rabbi Akiva holds like the rabbis, not like Rabbi Shimon, but it's a special case when it comes to violating an oath. Back to our Mishnah. The rabbis said to Rabbi Akiva, where do we find that one who eats any amount is liable, leading you to say that this person is liable? We always have a minimum measure. And the Gemara asks, and do we not? But isn't one who eats an ant liable, despite the fact that it is smaller than an olive bulk? And the Gemara answers, a whole entity is different, right? If you had some kind of like pile of ground up ants, then unless you ate an olive bulk, you would not be liable for violating the law against eating repugnant things. But if you just took a single ant that was recognizable as a single ant and you ate that, because it's a whole entity in and of itself, even though it's smaller than an olive, you would be liable for violating that provision because it's a whole entity. The Gemara asks, but isn't one who eats less than an olive bulk of consecrated food liable? If you eat something that is consecrated, we don't use the olive bulk measure, right? It belongs to the temple, it belongs to heaven, it belongs to God. You can't have any of it. But isn't one who eats less than an olive bulk of consecrated food liable? And the Gemara answers, in order to be liable for eating consecrated food, we require a different measure. We don't talk about an olive bulk. We talk about if you eat something that is worth 1 peruta, 1 penny, a penny's worth of food. And the Gemara asks, but isn't one who specifies in his oath that he's prohibited from eating any amount liable for doing so? If he specified when he spoke the oath that he will not eat any amount, doesn't that change the equation? Okay, now he's liable for eating any amount. But if he didn't say any amount, then we use the olive bulk. One who specifies that eating any amount is prohibited is indeed comparable to one who eats a whole entity like an ant, because he granted any amount significance when he stated his oath. But if he simply said, I will not eat, he didn't specify any amount, so the rabbis would only deem him liable for violating that if he ate the whole an olive bulk at least, and Rabbi Akiva would say, no, he's liable if any amount. The Gemara asks, but isn't there an unresolved question with regard to one who took an oath not to eat, and then he ate dirt? If, as the rabbis claim, one is not liable for eating less than a full measure, you could rather answer that which Rava asks with regard to one who says, on my oath I will not eat, and who then ate dirt. He says he will not eat. That's all he said. He will not eat. And then he ate dirt. Now that's a different question. What he ate is not food. He put dirt in his mouth. Are we going to say that dirt is like non-kosher food and it's still in the category of food, and so he did violate his oath? Or are we going to say that dirt has nothing to do with food, and so you can't call this an act of eating? Let's see. Based on the rabbi's statement, you could answer that he is not liable unless there is an olive bulk of dirt that he has eaten. But the Gemara rejects this conclusion when we say in the Mishna that there are no cases where a person who eats less than the full measure is liable. We say it with regard to items that are edible. Dirt is not edible. It doesn't come into this category at all. So one who says he will not eat and then he put dirt in his mouth, he has not violated his oath. We are on page 22a. The Gemara asks, but aren't konamos, right? When you say that something is like an offering, like consecrated food, meaning you're saying a vow or an oath that is prohibited to you to get benefit from it or to eat it. But aren't konamos an example of a case where one is liable for eating even less than an olive bulk? And the Gemara answers, konamos are like a case where he specifies that any amount is forbidden for consumption because he's saying it's like consecrated food. And with consecrated food, there it's not an olive bulk, it's a penny's worth, but it's not any amount. So why does konamos act like any amount? The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Akiva, I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Akiva said to the rabbis, where do we find one who speaks and is liable to bring an offering for it, as this oath taker merely speaks? He took an oath and he brings an offering for it. He didn't do an action, right? He said he was going to do something, then he didn't do it. So the only action he took was speaking. And the Gemara asks, and do we not? But isn't a blasphemer, right, who blasphemes the name of the Lord, he is liable to bring an offering according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, just for speech. And the Gemara answers, we are speaking of one who speaks and in doing so generates a prohibition. And this one, the blasphemer, is merely one who speaks and sins through that speech, but he does not bring an offering. The Gemara challenges, but doesn't a Nazir render wine forbidden to himself through speech when he makes the vow of Nazirus? And he does bring an offering. And the Gemara answers, we are speaking of one who brings an offering specifically for his speaking. And this one, the Nazir, brings an offering only at the end of his Nazirus, because that's how Nazirus ends. But it's not that he vowed to bring an offering, it's that he vowed to be a Nazir, and then in the course of being a Nazir and finishing his Nazirus, he has to bring offerings. But it wasn't specifically the speech to bring an offering. We are speaking of one who brings an offering specifically for his speaking. In this one, the Nazir brings an offering at the end of his Nazirus in order to permit wine to himself, not because the Nazirus is ending specifically. The Gemara challenges, but isn't consecrated property a case where one renders an item forbidden via speech alone and he brings an offering for its misuse? If you consecrate something and then you use it for yourself, that's misuse, me'ila. And the Gemara answers, we are speaking of one who brings an offering. We are speaking of one who, by speaking, generates a prohibition for himself and nevertheless brings an offering. And this one who consecrates an item generates a prohibition for the whole world. If you declare that something is consecrated, nobody can use it, not just you. Whereas if you say something is konam, right, like an offering to me, right? So then he's saying that he hasn't consecrated it, but it's going to act like a consecration with respect to himself. It's not consecrated sheep or consecrated food. Other people can still eat it and benefit from it. He has just made it prohibited to himself. The Gemara challenges, aren't koinamos an example of a case where one renders an item forbidden to himself by speech alone and brings an offering for using it? And the Gemara answers, Rabbi Akiva holds that there is no prohibition of me'ila, of misuse of consecrated property, with regards to koinamos, right? It's not the same as consecration. You just made it like a consecrated item as far as you're concerned. So you can't say that me'ila, misuse of consecrated property, would be the prohibition that applies to koinamos. And finally, Rava says the dispute between Rabbi Akiva and the rabbis is with regard to where one took an oath without specifying that he is liable for eating any amount. He didn't say any amount, he just says he won't eat. But in a case where he specifies that his oath applies to any amount, when he takes the oath, he says, I will not eat any amount. He says that specifically. Then everyone agrees that he is liable for eating any amount. And what is the reason for this? One who specifies this renders any amount significant. Like an ant, because it's a whole entity, is significant. And Rava says the dispute is with regard to a case where one takes an oath saying, on my oath I will not eat. But in a case where one says, on my oath I will not taste, all agree that he is liable for tasting any amount. And the Gemara asks, isn't it obvious that he is liable in that case? Tasting has no defined measure. And the Gemara answers, Rava nevertheless taught, lest you say that even if one takes an oath saying, I will not taste, he is liable only if he eats an olive bulk, as people say, to taste as a way of saying to eat. Therefore, Rava teaches us that this is not the case. That's where we'll knock off. And Sharon adds that when we talked earlier about Shamor v'Zachor, right, keeping Shabbos, not doing work on it, and Zachor, remembering it, by making Kiddush on Shabbos, that this, at least according to one interpretation, is the reason that women light 2 candles on Shabbos. Shamor v'Zachor. Beautiful teaching. Thank you, Sharon. And Sharon also says, it would seem to me there is clear intentionality about the past, right? If he swears an oath about something that's already happened. But with an oath about the future, there are several reasons an oath about the future can be unintentionally violated. Right. Like when you take an oath to the future, that's why we always say, that you intend to do something. You say, God willing, I'll do it. Now, I'm not even talking about oaths. And that's because the future is, by definition, unpredictable. And that's why you don't want to put yourself in this situation, even if you have the best intention in the world to fulfill your oath, whether to do or to not do something. You don't want to take that oath because something could easily come up that makes it impossible for you to fulfill your oath. And you won't know until the time period has passed in which you swore that oath with respect to the future. That's a great reason to avoid all oaths. But if indeed he swore that oath and then he didn't fulfill it, we're going to say that it comes under the law of the false oath. That's what I've got for us today. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, regular Friday time, noon Pacific. Have a great night.